And what did they talk about? Why this, how much bread and oil, honey and wine, their fields and orchards and beehives would yield when the Messiah came, in what wealth and comfort he would steep them, what nations he would conquer if they did not submit of themselves, and what miracles he would perform on the day when the skies would open and the earth tremble. But who will it turn out to be, this Messiah of yours, who already stands at the gate and listens to your weeping? A mighty king who will fill your granaries with wheat and your cruces with oil and honey, provide you all with fields and gardens, clothe every man's nakedness, and spread a roof over his head. Who is this in whom you repose so much faith? Where will he take all that is needed to turn such dreams into reality? Will he conquer so many countries? Where will he find the armies? Who will be his allies to help him subdue the whole world? These were the contemptuous questions of the young son of the high priest. Laughter, sprayed with spittle from toothless mouths, sounded all about him. Do you think he will have to conquer lands? The nations will submit to him of their own free will. When God's appointed will appear, a single grape will pour forth so much wine that I shall be able to fill one cruse after another and drink and drink and drink, declared one man, whose eyes, gummed together with sores, stood dead in the midst of his transfigured face. And I, stammered another out of his tangled and filthy beard, I will go out into my field, and I will cut one ear of corn, and fill all my bags, and have bread for weeks and months. Foolish one, another corrected him. Do you think you will have to cut ears of grain? The wind will thresh the grain. You will not even have to carry it to the mill, or else you will eat it off the stalk, because the grain will grow as bread, ready to be eaten. And I, trembled another joyfully, will lie all day long under my date tree, and the honey of the dates will drip straight into my mouth. His tongue protruded from his slavering mouth, as if it already licked honey. There sat among them, all gathered up in herself, a hunchbacked woman. She had drawn her legs under her, so that she looked like a square stump. Her sharp, bony head stuck out in front of her humped bosom. She stretched forth her short neck and whined ecstatically, "And every day I'm going to... What will you do every day?" the others asked eagerly, and in a voice that gurgled, as though she were choking with a sweet drink, she managed to get out, "Every day I'm going to give birth to a son." But blind Bar Talmai silenced them. He looked as though he wanted to stretch out his hands, seize them all by the throat, and choke them into silence. They paid no attention to his eyes, the whitish films of which were turning red, nor to his face, contorted with long weeping, nor to the choking cough of his voice, so absorbed were they in the visions of plenty. At last he managed to shout them down. No, that isn't it, not just eating and drinking and living and having children. No, not that, neither with arms nor with strength, but with the Spirit of the Lord, the Holy Spirit, as the prophet has prophesied, a time of pure justice, of pure truth, a time of the reign of God. Now the rest of Hanan's patience vanished. But who will this be, I ask? A king of the house of David? Even King Solomon, with all his great wisdom, could not perform the wonders you ask of this one. A new Solomon, the blind man took him up. Surely he will be of the house of David, as the prophet has prophesied, but he will not be a king. Not a new Solomon do we await, and not kings. For what, God save us, have our kings done for us? Have not the words of the prophet Samuel been fulfilled in regard to our kings? He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots and to be his horsemen. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and cooks and bakers. But it has been much worse. How long did the kingdom of David last? His own son Solomon made us into slaves, as Pharaoh, his father-in-law, whose daughter he took in marriage, did with the people of Egypt. What was our portion therein if he built a rich temple for the Lord? The golden altar dripped with the anguish of the people. All the width and depth of the copper sea, where the children of Zidon poured for the temple, could not hold the tears of the people. Neither an altar of gold nor a sea of copper does the Lord demand, but the heart of an upright man, and hands which do not oppress the widow and mistreat the fatherless. And as for him, King Solomon, the great Jewish king, did he not take to himself many strange wives? Did he not set up altars for the idols and abominations of Moab, so that the people was split and shattered into fragments? Did his children follow better paths? Did not his son Rehoboam say, "My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions"? And did not he and all his sons chastise us indeed with scorpions, and serve idols, and do evil in the sight of the Lord, until the Lord despised us and cast us away, as one casts away a precious doror plant which has turned wild and brings forth no more sweet flowers, but thorns instead? And here he flung away a weed, his face expressing contempt. Until the Lord made desolate his own house and drove us amid shame and pain into exile? And were the kings that came later any better? One generation the house of the Hasmoneans endured in righteousness, nay, not even that, and behold, they themselves placed in the temple the uncleanliness against which their grandfather had carried on the war of a hero. See what came of the second and third generation of Hasmonean kings. With their unceasing quarrels, with envy of each other, they brought Edom into the land, and set over us as king a wicked man of alien blood. Such have been the Jewish kings which we have lifted up over ourselves, until, in the end, we were content to have a foreign power rule over us. And has the rule of the high priests been any better? And here, at this point, I became certain that blind old Bar Talmai knew who his visitor was. He had doubtless recognized him by his voice, which he had heard more than once in the city house of Miriam, for a special venom now informed his speech, as though he had long waited for this opportunity to square his accounts with a scion of the priestly house. Are the sons of Hanan any better than the sons of Eli? Do they not fish with their forks for the choicest morsels in God's cauldron? And was not a voice heard but recently in the temple, "The sons of Eli know not the Lord"? Hanan had turned pale. What was heard? One in the assembly hastened to answer. A heavenly voice was heard crying in the temple. The priests heard it at their service, and they spread the news of it throughout the people. The children of Eli know not the Lord. And we all know that this means the sons of Hanan. A second added his voice. I have heard a rabbi in the temple court interpret as a sign to the sons of Eli the verse of the scripture, "The days of the wicked shall be cut short." But by now young Hanan had recovered his composure. He seized me by the hand and cried, "Come, Hegemon, we are among rebels." As we rode back, he was silent for a long time, digesting his rage. Now we were both convinced that not only the blind man, but the others too, had somehow known that the son of the old high priest was in their midst. I tried to tempt Hanan out of his bitterness by conversation. "What will you do with him? Have his tongue cut out?" "Unfortunately, we have no such punishment," he answered regretfully. "Ah, if he had said those things against the Caesar and our rule, you may be sure we should know what to do with him. But he insulted your kings and your religion. Sentence for blasphemy against your religion and your temple must be pronounced by your Sanhedrin." "But there's the curse of it," he answered. "Our Sanhedrin is rotten with Pharisees. What think you, Hegemon, they will do to him for having desecrated the sacred memory of our kings and the reputation of our high priests? They will condemn him, at most, to 39 lashes. Do you wonder that rebels and blasphemers multiply in our midst? That is bad indeed. Only recently I reported to the procurator on the lightness of your punishments." "Let me but once mount to the place of power," groaned the young man. "I will know then what to do with this rabble." "I am eager to hear your intentions." "Over and over again I have pleaded with the high priest to make a Sanhedrin only of the scholars of our party, a small Sanhedrin meeting in the house of the high priest. Blasphemers of the temple and the priesthood will fall exclusively under the jurisdiction of this Sanhedrin." By this time we had reached the city gate. There, among the tax collectors and the guardians of the gate, we came upon the agents of the temple. We knew them by their appointments. They carried in their hands the lead-loaded whips of their profession. They wore high white head coverings, and on their breasts were the badges of the high priest. They recognized the son of the old high priest, ran to encounter him, and bowed low before him. Hanan ben Hanan spoke sharply, "Go up to the Mount of Olives, to the village of Aini. In the garden of spices of Mary Magdalene, you will find a blind man by the name of Bar Talmai. Bind him and bring him before the court. He is one of the most dangerous blasphemers in the land." The words were scarcely uttered when the agents of the high priest were already on their way. It appeared later that when Bar Talmai came up for trial, Hanan ben Hanan failed in his plan to have the blind man sent away as a slave to the oil mills. But he called me to witness the carrying out of the sentence pronounced by the court. "What did I tell you?" he said, as he led me to the small judgment house, which stood near the entrance to the inner court of the temple. 39 lashes. How can we discourage criminals and blasphemers in that fashion? The guards had just carried out Bar Talmai and laid him on the marble floor. They stripped his back. The lashes of the whip were composed of double thicknesses of ass hide and ox hide sewn together, and those white-clad servants of the high priest knew how to ply the whip. One of them stood to his side and chanted, "1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3. Not one cry of pain came from the blind man. Lying on the floor, he beat his breast and confessed his sins. Shortly after this incident, Mary Magdalene disappeared entirely from the city. She had gone to Galilee, where, according to rumor, a new visionary had declared himself to the people. What became during that period of the blind oil mixer, I cannot tell. I was sent away from Judea for a time on a mission of importance to the Tetrarch Herod Antipater in Galilee. I met Bar Talmai again, and Miriam of Migdal too, but in totally different circumstances.